I would like to welcome Dr. Chris Taylor. He would be talking on the bioinformatics research and education for medical and graduate students. Dr. Chris Taylor's research lies in the realm of computational biology and bioinformatics, specifically related to applications of high throughput sequencing. This research is highly collaborative in nature, involving the development of algorithms for analysis and visualization of sequencing data. Over to you, Dr. Chris.
All right. Let me get my screen share up. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Dr. Chris, we can see your screen.
All right, great. So yes, as mentioned, I am an associate professor in the Department of Microbiology, Immunology, and Parasitology at Louisiana State Health Sciences in New Orleans. It's the same institution that Chindo, who you just heard speak, is from. I also serve as the director for the Louisiana Biomedical Research Network's Bioinformatics, Biostatistics, and Computational Biology core. And that network is headed up by Gus Kasoulas, who spoke just before Dr. Chindo Hicks. So thanks to the organizers and to Ilya for inviting me to speak. And I'm going to just discuss some of the bioinformatics research and education opportunities that we have for medical and graduate students, and how we sort of address the issues of teaching bioinformatics in a medical institution. All right, so my background is in computer science. So I got my undergraduate, my master's, and my PhD in computer science. And during the course of studying my PhD, I transitioned into computational biology. And this was a time when the human genome was just being finished, being sequenced. And one of the things that was occurring was that there were a lot of specialists who were studying bioinformatics and computational biology, and they came from all different backgrounds. So some people were from mathematics, some from computer science, others from biology who got into computation. And in that time, it was really, bioinformatics was very much of a niche landscape where there were a handful of these specialized researchers. But nowadays, nearly every discipline within biomedical research has the needs for bioinformatics methods. And we've really narrowing this chasm between the biology and the computing sciences. And I try to stand sort of in between the two so that I can interact with people on both sides of these fields. So the challenges that I have run into is that as high throughput sequencing has come onto the scene, starting in 2005 through about 2008 getting established, and then in the last decade has really exploded in the amount of different things that you can use it for, because the cost of sequencing come down so much. There's a plethora of sequencing data that needs to be analyzed. And it can't really be served anymore by these niche researchers in bioinformatics and computational biology. So I've found that there's a need for training biomedical researchers, particularly, to empower them to be able to perform computational data analysis on their own data. And those researchers really don't need to be bioinformatics specialists anymore. They can actually be biomedical researchers that learn enough to do analysis of their own data. The problem that arises is really that these researchers come from a diverse set of backgrounds. Some of them have had no computer programming experience whatsoever, whereas others have been programming as a hobby, for quite a bit of time. And so the traditional format or educational programs where you take people through step by step can end up being, in a course setting, too fast for some of the people who haven't had this, experience, but can also be incredibly slow for people who have had that experience. And so when you get one of these courses and you have these students with all these varying backgrounds, it's very challenging to do a traditional lecture course. So the emerging solution that we've come on to and have partnered with Pine Biotech and the Louisiana Biomedical Research Network is more of a reliance on technology to provide online learning opportunities, which will allow students to move individually at their own pace. If they can move really quickly through the modules, then they do them fast. And if they need to take some more time, they can take a bit more time. And this is really something that you can't really accomplish in a traditional in-person lecture format, but with online course modules, it allows people to move at their own pace. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, I developed these lecture series that I conducted, and I conducted them in person at LSU Health Sciences New Orleans, but we recorded all of the lectures using this media site capture technology. And we broadcast them also live streaming for remote viewing for people at LSU and other places throughout the LBRN network. And then there was participation via group forums for questions and announcements and distribution of course material. And then we did some quizzes and tests to test the understanding of the material. And the idea behind this was always that these recorded lecture series would persist and be available for viewing on demand. And so the 2 lecture series that I gave in 2016 and 2017 are still available on my metagenomics server. At one of them was a general introduction to informatics, and the other was an introduction to microbial community analysis. And these are all available as slide sets, videos, on all the other lecture material is available and archived for download at those above URLs. And interestingly, some unintended consequences occurred, and I got an email out of the blue from the Northern New England Clinical and Translational Research Network. And I guess they had done some searching and they had happened upon my lecture series. And so they asked me for permission to link the lecture series for their own investigators instead of, reinventing the wheel. And so I think this is, one of the very powerful aspects of the online learning paradigm is that you can reuse these materials and don't have to continually reinvent the wheel and give lecture after lecture on the same course material. And when we held these lecture series, we also, throughout the LBRN network, provided them to our primarily undergraduate institutes for usage. And they could take the lectures that were recorded online, and then they could add their own sort of lanyard to them. And so this was done at both LSU Shreveport in northern Louisiana and also at Southern University in Baton Rouge. And they enrolled students in courses at their own university. And a lot of them were just topical courses. And then they allowed the students to use the remote lecture material, but then the instructor, who was the instructor of record at each individual institution, would partner and would provide in-person lectures to supplement what the students were learning based on their needs. And so that was done at those 2 institutions. And then since then, the LBRN has partnered with Pine Biotech, and Pine Biotech offers a whole library of courses that are available online through their EDU platform. And those are courses that students, again, enroll and they take at their own pace, but then they're also, if you're enrolled in the LBRN programs, are supplemented with some in-person meetings that are done online as well. So this addresses part of the critical need for education in the field of bioinformatics. And so this Pine Biotech program, it was initially established in the summer of 2018 in that partnership with Pine Biotech and the Tauber Bioinformatics Institute. We had obtained 25 educational licenses as part of the LBRN, and we provided them to each of our primarily undergraduate institution campuses, and they were able to enroll in the Pine Biotech educational modules and take them. And so that pilot program went so well that it's been expanded into a full-blown partnership with Pine Biotech. And the students that take these modules on genomics, metagenomics, transcriptomics, and other topics, they are encouraged to present their project posters at the LBRN annual meeting and other meetings that are held, a lot of them virtually now due to the COVID restrictions. So that's been a large partnership that has allowed the kind of expansion of the ability to teach bioinformatics to individuals who have very diverse backgrounds, and they can go at their own pace through these course modules. So this has sort of been a whole evolution over the past 5 or 6 years. And here's just a snippet of some of the current offerings from those Pine Biotech modules on transcriptomics, genomics, metagenomics, and epigenomics. And this is all apropos to the Omics forum that we're going through right now. So one of the other things that I'll draw your attention to is that as part of the LBRN and the bioinformatics, biostatistics, and computational biology core that I direct, we hold an annual conference on bioinformatics and computational biology every year. And we just held our 8th annual conference. The 8th annual conference was originally scheduled for April of 2020, but due to the emerging COVID-19 pandemic, we didn't have time to pivot, and we actually had to cancel it. So we held our 8th annual conference virtually April 15th to 17th of this year. And we have the recordings from all of the past talks are available online through the LBRN portal on YouTube. And the links are available at the LBRN conference on biology and bioinformatics link above. And part of the meeting that we held just this year was a session that was entirely organized. It was a whole day organized by Todd Riley at the NIH Center for Information Technology. And this was discussing the NIH's STRIDES initiative, which is a cloud computing initiative whereby they partnered with Amazon Web Services Research and Google Cloud Research. And they provide training, they provide cloud credits for researchers at Embry institutions. And we've been participating in a lot of these trainings over the course of the last couple of months since they've been established. And then we also had other eminent bioinformatics and computational biology speakers who covered topics across the gamut of computational biology, including pandemic modeling of COVID-19, the gut microbiome, herpes simplex virus, and the role of statistics in epigenetics research. So this is just a snapshot of all of our primary speakers that we held at the 2021 conference. And the 2022 conference will be held in April of 2022. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. We're not sure quite yet whether it will be a virtual format, whether it will be back to an in-person format, or some form of hybrid format. So we'll see how that goes. So zooming in a little bit, that's a lot of the initiatives that I'm involved with on a broader scale. My own research lab at LSU Health Sciences, when I built it back in 2012, I built it with this open lab layout in order to promote collaboration. So we don't have, cubicles or partitions or anything. And I mean, that was a great idea back in 2012. Maybe it's not such a good idea nowadays. But the idea was that, if somebody's sitting there working on a problem and they have an issue, they could turn to the person next to them and see if they had some advice. And so I always have a mix of different researchers in the lab at different career stages. I've had postdocs, I've had graduate students, I've had undergraduates through our summer research program. I've even had high school students through our summer research program, and even a few junior faculty members who wanted to come in and learn how to analyze their own biomedical research data. And so, we work with them, and it's sort of this, the old proverb of, if you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. So the idea is we teach these researchers how to analyze their data, and then they can kind of spread their wings and do it on their own in the future. And so I primarily, in my own research, I work primarily with MD, PhD students who go through both our medical program and our PhD program, and it's a joint program. And we just graduated Vince Maffei. He was an F30 fellow working in alcohol research, looking at the gut microbiota. And I currently have in my lab Jacob Elnager, who's just submitted an F30 grant, which we hope will get funded. And he's working on shotgun metagenomics analysis of the vaginal microbiome with specific emphasis on bacterial vaginosis. And then I've just hosted for a rotation a student, John Lammons, who did a rotation this summer and likely will join my lab as another MD PhD student. We've had several past members of the lab. As I said, many undergraduates, several PhD students who work with other investigators have come in, and I've helped to co-mentor them if they have a project in their home lab that involves DNA sequencing analysis. And so in terms of ongoing research projects, my research really focuses in heavily now on the vaginal microbiota and various sexually transmitted infections. So I have a multi-PI R01 grant that is studying the clearance of chlamydia prior to treatment. So we have some women who come in, they get tested for chlamydia, they end up positive. By the time we call them back in for treatment, they've actually cleared the chlamydial infection through natural host defense. And we're looking at the properties of the microbiome that potentially promote that natural clearance prior to antibiotic treatment. We've also got a new R01 that's based in South Africa and is joint with the University of Cape Town and the University of Southern California. And that's looking at adverse birth and newborn outcomes and the interaction of the vaginal microbiome with preterm birth and adverse birth outcomes. Then there's an R01 that I have with a collaborator at UAB, Christina Musney, to study bacterial vaginosis. And my student Jacob, the F30 that he submitted, is really working jointly under that grant. I'm also a member of the Center for Clinical and Translational Research at UAB. LSU Health Sciences is one of the sub-sites for that, so that's this UL1 grant. And then we're doing some work on the gut microbiota and precision medicine under a UH2 grant. And we just got an R21, got a fundable score last month. That this is going to be kind of an interesting one. We're going to look at transgender men who are just initiating testosterone use. And we're going to look at how that impacts the vaginal and reproductive tract microbiota and the propensity for getting bacterial vaginosis after testosterone use. And then, as I mentioned, I'm also part of the Louisiana Biomedical Research Network. And more recently, we've gotten an NSF grant funded for a high performance computing cluster. So we're just into the start of the second year for that. And that grant has supported the acquisition of a large computing cluster, which we call Tigerfish. And it's it's actually the first high performance computing that has been broadly available for our Health Sciences Center campus in New Orleans. We've had access to some of the clusters in Baton Rouge and through the Loney network, but this is for New Orleans specifically, and it provides up to 193 teraflops of compute, 1,400 total compute cores. It's primarily composed of these compute nodes, each of which has 192 gigabytes of RAM, but it also has available a large memory node, which has up to 1.5 terabytes of RAM available for tasks that really need a lot of memory to perform their compute. And so we just rolled this out. We got this cluster in April of 2021, and we've got a bunch of users using it for all kinds of things. My lab's using it. Chindo is a co-PI on this grant. His lab is using it. Also, Carmen Canavier is using it for some computational neurobiology. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to say much about this because Chindo covered the master's program in bioinformatics that's is being initiated at LSU Health Sciences, and you've already got the link to that bioinformatics program. And lastly, I'll say that I'm one of the founding members of the Microbial Genomics Resource Group at LSU Health Sciences, and so if you follow that link. It's essentially, it operates sort of like a core, but we're not really a core. So we just call ourselves a resource group. And it consists of myself in charge of the bioinformatics, David Welsh, who's a pulmonary medical doctor, and Mung, who does all of our sequencing prep and sequencing, and then a variety of postdocs and students who work with us. But we have on this website, we have a lot of our joint publications and everything, but down near the bottom and also accessible via this link is, our cost and our sample submission. So we do a lot of microbial genomics because we have an Illumina MiSeq. And so, we do a lot of microbial community analysis, and we're just starting to get into some shotgun metagenomics as well. And so that's pretty much all I have to say. And, if there's any time for questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, great. Thank you.